Hello there everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a video for you all that I've wanted to make for a very long time. You always see my bookshelves in the back of these videos. You see the Marvel Omnis over here. You see the Legends and Canon Star Wars hardcovers right behind me. But what you don't see is the shelves of Blu-rays I have. I am a huge film fanatic. I went to film school. I am a filmmaker by trade, and I love movies. Movies are the thing that really I pride myself on. I love and have a huge passion for film, and I don't feel like I talk about it enough on the channel. I'm going to be running down my entire Blu-ray collection as a 1,000 subscriber special. Thank you all so much for subscribing. If you are just finding this channel for the first time, well, make sure you join us. I'm going to have a lot of collection videos. I do have a ton of collections. I have gotten requests for the Marvel Omnis over here as well. Big DC collection. One I was going to do was I have a box of Pokemon cards that I've had forever, and I know that's pretty popular right now. I am a pretty big Pokemon fan, however, I haven't touched the cards really since I was young, and I started collecting them in the 90s and early 2000s, so I think I have a lot of cool ones there. Keep an eye out for all those types of videos, as well as the content you're consistently getting on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, comment below, let me know what you think of my collection. Let me know some of your favorite movies. I'm going to do like a top 10, top 5 favorite movies eventually one day. But you'll kind of see what I like and what some of my tastes are in movies when I do break down the entirety of my Blu-ray collection. So just a bit of backstory on my Blu-ray collection. I haven't considered myself an avid Blu-ray collector outside of Criterion Collection for a while now. I buy the ones that I really want, and the rest I wait until I can get them for a little bit cheaper price. A lot of my collection has been accumulated secondhand, and many of these were collected probably between the years of about 2012 to 2017-18. I do have them sorted by genre usually on my shelves, but sometimes I have movie series or franchise together, and underneath those categories I do sort them alphabetically or numerically if they're in a series. We're going to kick it off with just the first thing I grabbed off the shelf, and that is Disney movies. So I have Disney here, starting with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which I feel like today has been pretty criminally underrated. A pretty random one I had bought before Disney Plus existed, when I was trying to have watched every Disney animated film, which I have done, and if you want to see a ranking of those, I could do that as well. This is a 2-pack of The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad and Fun and Fancy Free. I can't say either of these are amongst my favorites, but they are fun watches, especially if you're into animation and Disney history. Alice in Wonderland, which also I feel like is underrated nowadays. This is a fantastic movie. This is probably in my top 10, top 12 Disney movies of all time, and I feel like as an adult you appreciate it even more. Lady and the Tramp, never been one of my absolute favorites, but I do really enjoy this movie. Same with 101 Dalmatians, again not one of my favorites, but it's a solid one and a really interesting different art style than Disney did for their first really 25, 30 years in the business. The Jungle Book is some of my favorite music in all of Disney movies. It has some really classic songs, stuff that I've loved ever since I was growing up. Another kind of underrated one, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. The Winnie the Pooh stuff is actually really solid, and it's a lot of fun. These are great characters. I feel like people are more familiar with the characters than the actual film. This is definitely worth it. Check it out. Oliver and Company was another pickup that I made when I was trying to watch every Disney movie before Disney Plus existed. I'm not a huge fan of this one. It has like one good song. It's all right. Beauty and the Beast is fantastic. This is one of Disney's best movies. Bit of a spoiler for maybe a future list or something, but The Lion King is my favorite Disney movie of all time. Fantastic, perfect music, great characters, great animation, amazing story, and I grew up with this one. This was one I watched endlessly. Talk about underrated Disney movies. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The first one is actually, it's amazing. To me, it's so good, and I don't understand why people don't talk about this one anymore. Mulan is also excellent. Great action in this one. That's what always has stood out to me. It's a more serious, grounded story. Love Mulan. Treasure Planet is kind of a weird one for me. I grew up with this movie, but never watched the whole thing. A lot of the iconography of Treasure Planet was coming out right when I was, a Disney impressionable youth watching all these animated movies, and I never got to see it. Watched it as an adult and really enjoyed it. I think it's underrated as well. Meet the Robinsons, a very random one for me to have. Picked this up at a flea market for $1. The Princess and the Frog kind of flew under the radar when it came out. I'm glad it's getting its due. Wreck-It Ralph, also a really strong movie, especially for its video game references. A lot of fun. Frozen, I mean, there's not much to say about Frozen. I think it's really good, even if it is a bit overrated nowadays. They somehow got out of order, but here's Tangled, also great. I think it is better than Frozen. Big Hero 6, another one that feels like it's getting a resurgence. Really good movie. Honestly, a little underrated when it came out. I think it's awesome. Zootopia, maybe my favorite Disney movie they've made in the last 15 years or so. It's so good. Not directly Disney Animation, but Touchstone Pictures, owned by Disney. The Nightmare Before Christmas is one of my favorite movies of all time. I fell in love with this, had a bit of a Nightmare Before Christmas phase. Kicking off the Pixar entries here with Toy Story, another classic. Everybody knows how great Toy Story is. And Toy Story 2, which I feel like now that my generation is growing up and has a voice here online, finally is getting the due it deserves. It's a fantastic movie. And I do have a steelbook of Toy Story 2, and I got these cool cases off of eBay. I forgot who sold them to me, but they're definitely worth it for protecting your steelbooks. Monsters, Inc., also one of my favorites. And then an interesting copy of Finding Nemo. It looks like a DVD, but it is a DVD and a Blu-ray. This was one I got off of Disney. I don't know if they still have it. They have that movie club website where you could, if you bought so many of them, you get points and you can redeem them for other movies or other things, posters, merchandise. And I redeemed it for Finding Nemo. I've got a steelbook of The Incredibles, also an amazing movie. WALL-E is probably top 2 Pixar movies for me, top 2 or 3. I love this movie. My favorite animated movie of all time, Up. I actually just rewatched this a couple days ago. It's still a masterpiece. Absolutely love it, beginning to end. And I feel like Pixar just had their best streak ever from 2008 to 2010 between WALL-E, Up, and Toy Story 3. Probably the 3 greatest Pixar movies of all time, in my opinion. Brave is one I was late to the party on. I think it's a good movie. Still not one of Pixar's best. Monsters University, one that's also getting a bit of a resurgence, I feel like. I gotta rewatch this one. I haven't watched it since I bought it originally on Blu-ray. Another great one with Inside Out. Looking forward to the second one. One that you're probably saying, well, you don't have Cars or Ratatouille. You have The Good Dinosaur. Yeah, I know. This was in the prime of me just buying everything that came out on Blu-ray that I wanted. Finding Dory is actually pretty good. I do like this movie. I've always really enjoyed The Incredibles 2. I know there's a bit of discourse for people who don't love it, but I thought it was really good. We're going to wrap up Disney with some of the live-action movies. I've got the Jungle Book remake, which is still by far the best. Beauty and the Beast, which I thought was a pretty admirable attempt. It's really solid. It's not perfect, but it's still really good. I don't care what anybody says. I love Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins, one of my childhood favorites. I don't have the original on Blu-ray. I have it on DVD. But I do have Mary Poppins Returns, and I really like this. I thought it was a great attempt at trying to follow it up. I have the first 4 Pirates of the Caribbean movies on Blu-ray. I love this series. It's so good. I know it tails off towards the end, but I really enjoy them, even as guilty pleasure movies. I think Dead Man's Chest is a really good one, too. I rank them probably in order of release with 1, 2, 3. I think it's a toss-up between 4 and 5. 4 is a little less cheesy than 5, but I don't know. It's a toss-up. Like I said earlier, love Mary Poppins. Saving Mr. Banks might not be the most accurate movie ever, but I really enjoy it. It's a really strong movie. A super random one to have, Prince of Persia, which my parents bought for us because my sister was a big fan of this one as a kid. You know, I haven't rewatched it in a long time. Maybe a guilty pleasure. We'll see. I do remember liking this when I was 10 years old and saw it in theaters. Coraline, a movie that is pretty creepy. Honestly scared me as a kid, but so good. Henry Selick, some of his top work. The excellent Fantastic Mr. Fox, one of the best animated movies of all time. A flea market pickup, Happy Feet. Haven't watched this in probably decades. How to Train Your Dragon, an excellent series. Love these 3 movies. This is just the first one, though. Kubo and the Two Strings. I love this movie. Nobody talks about it anymore. I love stop motion animation. This was awesome. The Lego Movie, honestly, some of the best writing. So funny, so surprising. And then doesn't really go with the vibe of the rest of the animation, but The Yellow Submarine, As a big Beatles fan, this is a trip. I've got all the MCU movies right here. I guess that's a good follow-up to Disney. So we'll start out with Iron Man 1. Then we've got The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, The First Avenger, and Marvel's The Avengers. Iron Man 3, which was pretty disappointing, honestly, when it came out, as well as Thor, The Dark World. 2013 was not a great year for the MCU. But it rebounded in a major way with Captain America, The Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy. As you might notice, I do have a lot of these 3D Blu-rays. I never owned a 3D Blu-ray player, but I kind of wanted to get one at one point. Never did. We'll see if I ever do. But I did love that these ones had slip covers. The basic ones without 3D. Marvel wasn't doing slip covers for, so I felt like for the slightly extra money, might as well get the slip covers. That was what I was thinking back in 2015. I will still fight for Captain America Civil War to be the best Marvel movie of all time. It is so good. My favorite MCU movie by far. And then also Doctor Strange, which was a great origin story for 2016. The first of these Best Buy steelbooks that you'll see for the 4K versions of Marvel films. This is Guardians Volume 2. I love this cover, actually. This is a great one. And then I forgot where this version of Spider-Man Homecoming came from. I feel like it was Target or Walmart. But it comes in this box, cardboard box, and it has the Spider-Man mask with all the discs behind it. Just had the regular 4K Blu-ray for Thor Ragnarok. But I got this Black Panther steelbook from Best Buy. This is an awesome one. Avengers Infinity War, which is one of my favorite MCU movies. But I don't love this cover. It's just basically the movie poster on here. I prefer when they do something unique, like some unique artwork like the Black Panther one. Lenticular cover of Ant-Man and the Wasp. I did get the steelbook for Captain Marvel, though, and I don't really know why, but I'm glad I have a steelbook at least for this movie. And then another really good cover for Avengers Endgame's steelbook. And then the basic 4K Blu-ray for Spider-Man Far From Home. As you can see, I have no Phase 4 or 5 MCU movies. I guess I would like to complete the collection one day. I'm happy with just having the Infinity Saga, although I do very much so want No Way Home. Okay, now you're going to just start seeing them in a lot of random orders. Just the way I pulled them off the shelf. Starting here with sports movies, we've got The Fighter with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg. Christian Bale won an Oscar for this. Foxcatcher, which I really liked when it came out. I feel like nobody talks about this movie anymore, and back then people called it boring, but I really enjoyed it. 42, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. This is a solid biopic. Gotta throw Real Steel in there in these sports movies. It's a pretty fun movie, not gonna lie. I have Rocky and I have Creed 1. I don't have the rest of the series. Maybe I'll invest in a box set one day or something. I really enjoy Rocky. I have a Rocky tier list here on the channel that included Creed 3. I've seen them all. I really enjoy all the movies. Honestly, 5's the only one I don't really like. Rush is a pretty underrated movie here in the US, at least. I don't know if Formula One, because it's bigger overseas, maybe they like this movie more over there, but Chris Hemsworth, great performance, maybe one of his best ever. And Daniel Bruhl, I believe this was, I think, his English language debut, or at least his first big English language role. And I really like him as an actor. I wish he got more roles. The Devastating Warrior with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. And then Mickey Rourke and Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler. We're going to move over to war movies. Why after sports? I don't really know, but that's just what I have next. Zero Dark 30. 2012, I would say, was the first year I really discovered I fell in love with cinema. And I tried to watch all the Best Picture winners or nominees that year. I really like this movie, even if it's pretty historically inaccurate. I have a steelbook of Saving Private Ryan, obviously one of the best war movies of all time. Werner Herzog and Christian Bale's underrated Rescue Dawn. Lone Survivor with Marky Mark. The Hurt Locker won Best Picture. I think it's a really good movie. I actually kind of prefer Zero Dark 30 though. The 4K Blu-ray of Hacksaw Ridge. This is another really good one. Kind of underrated. Nobody talks about this anymore. Debated to have this in my classics section or in my war section. Went with it here. Guns of Navarone. Another one that could be in both classics and war, The Great Escape. Robin Williams' Good Morning Vietnam. My top 2 war movies of all time, probably Full Metal Jacket from Stanley Kubrick, Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down, and then my favorite war movie of all time, although, it's not a unique opinion, Apocalypse Now. And then I do have a steelbook of American Sniper. Fittingly, I have classics next, starting with All About Eve. One of my favorites, The Apartment. Very long one, Ben-Hur. This is kind of one of those, I don't know what to describe it as. It's like a magnetic kind of album Blu-ray. I have a couple of these. The first Hitchcock movie I'm going to show here, The Birds. You know me, I love Obi-Wan and I love Alec Guinness, and this is arguably his best movie, The Bridge on the River Kwai. I guess that could have been in war too. Cool Hand Luke. I love this movie. It's like a true time capsule of counterculture. Really strong, excellent movie. Double Indemnity, one of the classic noirs of all time. Movie I will probably never watch again, although if you're a film buff, you have to have watched it once, Gone with the Wind. If Bridge on the River Kwai is Alec Guinness's best film, Kind Hearts and Coronets is his best performance. This movie is awesome. This year I became a pretty big monster and kaiju fan, but I've always been a big fan of the OG King Kong. We've got Lawrence of Arabia here, one of the classics of classics. The Maltese Falcon, a very, very famous noir, also really good. Hitchcock's North by Northwest. I honestly think this is one of his top films. It's usually discussed in the top 5, but it's for me like a top 3. One of my other favorite Hitchcocks of all time, one of the best thrillers ever, Rear Window. Not one of Kubrick's best, but definitely cool to see him working on a big prestige movie in the studio system. A Streetcar Named Desire. I haven't opened this one, but I have seen the film. Sunset Boulevard is incredible. And To Kill a Mockingbird, everybody knows how great this movie is, in the book as well. Touch of Evil, which I will say right now, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'll think of something later or find a movie here later that is better, but this might be the best noir of all time in my opinion. Orson Welles is amazing in this movie. It's such a gripping thriller. Definitely check it out. And then 2 more classics to wrap this up with. Vertigo, and you have to have Wizard of Oz in your collection. How about some romance or rom-coms? A little bit of both. I have 500 Days of Summer. The Big Sick. I really love this movie. Crazy Rich Asians. Juno. This was one of the first Blu-rays I ever bought. One I actually haven't watched yet. Vicky Cristina Barcelona. Got some fantasy here for you next. We've got The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I love this movie. This was one of my first big movie love. Such underrated music too. Definitely check this out if you haven't seen it. My favorite Tim Burton movie ever, Edward Scissorhands. All 8 Harry Potter films, another series I've fallen in love with a bit more and more over the years. I did also get the first Fantastic Beasts movie. This is the only one that's okay. The other 2 are really bad. Guillermo del Toro's best work, Pan's Labyrinth, and the hilarious but also heartwarming The Princess Bride. Got some musicals here for you all, starting with Dreamgirls. I was obsessed with La La Land back in 2016. Les Miserables, I probably said that wrong, but this is really good, but definitely not in that top tier musicals as much as I would like it to be. Mamma Mia, one that was big with my family. That's a fun movie. Could have gone in classics as well, but My Fair Lady. Gotta rep Ewan McGregor here with Moulin Rouge. He's so good in this. He is actually a good singer. I like this movie. Maybe the best musical of all time, Singing in the Rain. It's the perfect big budget Hollywood musical. We don't get these types of movies anymore, and when I watch this, you're transported back to a time when everything was so fun in these films. A Star is Born, another really good movie. And also could have gone into classics, but West Side Story. This is the original, not the Steven Spielberg one. How about some Christmas movies next? Starting with Home Alone, then continuing with White Christmas, another great classic Hollywood movie musical. You gotta own The Muppet Christmas Carol. Christmas Story, which I actually didn't grow up with. Watched it a little later when I was an adult. This movie's hilarious. I actually really love this one. Also could have gone into classics, and I almost put it there because it's a fantastic film. You don't have to be someone who celebrates Christmas to love and appreciate It's a Wonderful Life. Okay, so my drama section is a little messy right now, but these are kind of all ones that have some historical significance, maybe historical dramas, might find more throughout the collection. This has kind of been a good way for me to kind of reorganize my collection as well. But Argo won Best Picture in 2012 or 2013 Oscars. I found and discovered my passion for cinema in 2012. And Argo is one of the reasons why I love this movie, even if it might not be one of the best Picture winners ever, but this is a really good movie. Silence is one of Scorsese's most underrated movies. It spoke to me on a lot of levels. I really appreciate the performances in this film, and the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. Not much to say about Schindler's List. This is one of the most heart-wrenching movies of all time. This is the 20th anniversary edition, and it comes inside one of these I don't know, what do you call these? I don't know. It's a cool set. Also some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. The Revenant. George C. Scott's Patton. Roland Emmerich and Mel Gibson's The Patriot. One of the most brutal movies I have ever seen. The Passion of the Christ. Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. Another 2012 movie that I fell in love with. Lincoln. Gladiator. I feel like in today's world you either love or hate Gladiator. I'm more in the love camp. One of the lesser well-received Martin Scorsese films, although that's not really saying much because all his films are pretty well-received. Gangs of New York. The 1990 Best Picture winner, Dances with Wolves. One that I feel is pretty overrated, Braveheart. I do really like this movie. However, I don't think it's anywhere close to a 5 out of 5 or like a 4.5 out of 5. This is a good movie, but I don't think it's a great movie. Next we have Westerns, and we're going to start out with 3:10 to Yuma. This is the remake. Also Bone Tomahawk. This is kind of a horror western in a way. It's disturbing, but it also is a pretty gripping movie. I have the Clint Eastwood Dollars trilogy, starting with Fistful of Dollars, then For a Few Dollars More, and then The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This is one of those KL Studio classics. Obviously, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, one of the most classic westerns of all time. And I would probably rank them that way. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, then For a Few Dollars More. A Fistful of Dollars would be my least favorite. More of a modern western, but Hell or High Water. High Noon, a pretty tense, thrilling western. Magnificent Seven, not much to say about it. It's a classic. Another modern western, one of the great movies of the 2000s, No Country for Old Men. Another Sergio Leone classic, Once Upon a Time in the West. Maybe the most classic western of all time, John Wayne's The Searchers. Then you have Alan Ladd's Shane. I do, however, love The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood's Best Picture winner. Not necessarily a western in the classic sense, but if you love action and you like westerns, The Wild Bunch is the best action western ever. So these aren't a genre per se, but sometimes I put directors who I really love and I have all their films together. Starting with Reservoir Dogs, and we're going to start with Quentin Tarantino. Mine, yours, everybody's favorite Quentin Tarantino film, Pulp Fiction. I feel like if you're a movie fan, you've had some run-in with this film at some point. Jackie Brown is without a doubt Quentin Tarantino's weakest film, unless you want to count Death Proof. I have the steelbook versions of Kill Bill, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and I also do have a Grindhouse steelbook. Second favorite Tarantino movie of all time, Inglourious Bastards. I also am a huge fan of Django Unchained. I love this movie. One that I would like to revisit soon, The Hateful Eight. I did enjoy it when it came out, but it's never been amongst my favorites. And then one that took a couple watches to really fall in love with for me, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is definitely amongst his upper half. The only other director that I have all his films sorted here together, although I don't have following, is Christopher Nolan, and I'm starting with Memento. Next is Insomnia, which is one I want to revisit because some people have been saying this is amongst his best, although I've always considered it maybe his weakest outside of Following. Batman Begins redefined comic book origin stories. A fantastic Batman movie, definitely amongst the top 3 or 4 Batman movies ever. There's some prestige slander out there, but I love this movie. I'm a big fan of the twists, the performances, the story. It's a gripping movie. You can call my taste basic if you want to, but this is still my favorite superhero movie of all time. The Dark Knight is fantastic. It's one of the movies that helped me fall in love with cinema. It's one of those genre movies that even as a casual film goer, when you watch it, you're pulled out and you're like, wow, this is what the art can do. Inception's one of the great modern sci-fis of all time. I'm a big fan of The Dark Knight Rises. You can hate on me if you want, but I do love this movie. Another one of these magnetic kind of cases for Interstellar. This is a really cool one. I think this was a Walmart exclusive. I absolutely love Dunkirk. What it does from a filmmaking standpoint, the sound design, cinematography, the sense of time that is present in this film, the way you're on edge the entire time. I love Dunkirk. It's an amazing experience. Tenet will have a special place in my heart because this was a film I actually did go out in the middle of COVID to go see. I've watched it quite a few times and I'm still, trying to really piece it together. I've seen every James Bond movie, although I don't have them all on Blu-ray. I kind of just started picking up single versions of them, and I really should have just bought a box set because initially I wasn't planning on watching them all, but I ended up doing so. I got Goldfinger, of course, the best of the classic Bond movies in my opinion. A steelbook of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I'll go ahead and say it, this is the most underrated Bond movie ever. George Lazenby's only Bond, but it is a gripping story. It's a really good story. It's heartbreaking. It's action-packed. The way the action was elevated in this film into something a lot more modern, way ahead of its time. Besides George Lazenby being a mediocre Bond, this is a great movie. When I was doing my binge, I couldn't really find the Roger Moore movies on any streaming services, so I ended up buying the Roger Moore Collections Volume 1 and 2. Roger Moore is a good Bond, but his movies are by far the weakest. Also very underrated are the Timothy Dalton movies. Both of these are strong, they're dark, they're more in the vein of something like Craig's Casino Royale. The only Brosnan one I own is GoldenEye, another good Bond, but his filmography overall is pretty mediocre outside of this one. Casino Royale is my second favorite Bond of all time. I just rewatched this. I love this film. It's so good on every level. And Daniel Craig, he's so good. He's my favorite Bond. But my favorite Bond movie of all time is Skyfall. I think it marries both classic Bond and new Bond so well, and in a way it's just got everything I want from a Bond movie. It's got gadgets, it's got suaveness, it's got great performances, meaningful characters, meaningful character deaths. Skyfall is it, man. If you don't like Skyfall, I don't know what to say. I did get Spectre. I was planning on getting all of Craig's Bonds. Spectre's good. It's not great. Had to ditch the jacket for moving all these movies in here. Let's start with, I don't know what this section is. I think it was crime / thrillers. We got Captain Phillips, Clint Eastwood's Gran Torino, one of the best thrillers of the last decade or more, really. Whiplash. An alright movie about the Boston bombing, Patriots Day. I know a lot of people don't like this, but this was a flea market pickup. I believe it was like $1. Edward Norton's Primal Fear. This is a good movie. I don't think it's a great movie. A great movie, though, Parasite. This movie is worth the hype. It's so good. I love this movie. As a little aside, I did actually see Parasite and The Lighthouse on the same day. One of the most memorable days for me ever watching movies in a movie theater. Jake Gyllenhaal's best performance ever is in Nightcrawler. Network is an absolute masterpiece. Couple George Clooney movies for you. Michael Clayton, and also a flea market pickup. Still haven't watched this. The Ides of March. The Hunt for Red October. This is a great one. It's probably the best Jack Ryan movie. David Fincher's Gone Girl, a really strong thriller. And Ben Affleck's underrated directorial debut, Gone Baby Gone. Don't really know why this one's in here. I guess it is thriller. I probably would put it with war. It's not really an action movie like the rest of the Rambo movies are, but First Blood. One of Harrison Ford's best films, The Fugitive. I'm not supposed to talk about Fight Club, so that's all you're going to get from me. Drive is a slow burn thriller, but a very good movie. Next we got crime films, and I'm starting with Wall Street, the Quentin Tarantino written true romance. I believe it's a Tony Scott film. Ben Affleck's second directorial effort, The Town, one of the better bank robbery heist movies of the last probably 15 years. I forgot when this came out. Once Upon a Time in America from Sergio Leone. Leon the Professional with Natalie Portman, and I forgot what that guy's name is. It is Jean Reno. The excellent crime drama from the 90s, LA Confidential. The underrated A History of Violence. Almost put this with my comic book films section. Michael Mann's masterpiece, Heat. The second best crime family movie of all time. Goodfellas. The Departed. David O. Russell's American Hustle. This is an alright movie. Got a couple classics here with The Shawshank Redemption. And then one of Scorsese's best films of all time, Taxi Driver. David Lynch's Blue Velvet. And then, of course, the crime movies to end all crime movies. The greatest of all time, The Godfather. This is the trilogy. My favorite is Godfather 1. So I think this is just my straight drama section. Stuff I didn't really know where else to put. Spotlight, one of my favorite movies of all time. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is also a digibook. Alexander Payne's 2013 movie, Nebraska. I really like this movie. I feel like nobody talks about it anymore. Mud, with McConaughey, came out, I believe, is it in the Reconnaissance, right after, around there. My favorite movie of 2016, Manchester by the Sea. This movie was absolutely heartbreaking. Another 2012 movie, Life of Pi. This really should either be in my biopic or like historical fiction section, but The King's Speech. And a little story about The King's Speech. This is a long video, so you can skip my stories if you want. The King's Speech, one of the movies that got me into cinema as well. I have a soft spot in my heart for this, even if I've grown to not really love biopics. The King's Speech I actually watched in a public speaking class I took in high school, and it was one of the first first times I had watched kind of a drama to where I was absolutely sucked in and really enjoyed the characters and the story. Yeah, this movie means a lot to me. Daniel Day-Lewis is In the Name of the Father. Baz Luhrmann with Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio in The Great Gatsby. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's beautifully written film Good Will Hunting. Robin Williams, one of his best performances. David Lynch's tragic film The Elephant Man. Forrest Gump, which is one of those movies that I feel like almost anybody who likes cinema watches at an early age and really falls in love with. I love this movie, although, it has gotten worse for me over the years, but it's still a really strong movie. Yet another 2012 movie, Denzel's Flight. Tom Hanks' Castaway. A strong movie. I don't know if I praise it as much as everybody else does. 2014 Best Picture winner Birdman or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. 127 hours. It's a pretty good movie. Continuing with some biopics, I have the Johnny Cash movie Walk the Line. Tom Hanks in Sully. I believe this is a Clint Eastwood film. Straight Outta Compton. This was definitely a fun experience in the theater seeing this. Danny Boyle's Steve Jobs movie, which is a really good little tight, thrilling, I don't know what you even call it, like product movie. I enjoyed this movie, though. The acting's really strong, even if Michael Fassbender doesn't really look that much like Steve Jobs. One of Fincher's classics, The Social Network. I feel like everybody who has Blu-rays has this cover of it, too. Tom Hanks and Denzel's Philadelphia. As a big Beach Boys fan, I got to see this one summer in Santa Cruz, and it made me very happy to watch Love and Mercy. Damien Chazelle's First Man. Very under-talked about film from Tim Burton. Ed Wood. A great Johnny Depp performance. And also, if you like cinema and you want to appreciate somebody with a true passion for the art form, Ed Wood, this movie will make you fall in love with him and his terrible movies. Gary Oldman's Oscar-winning Darkest Hour. I've always been a big Gary Oldman fan. As a fan of Queen, I did enjoy Bohemian Rhapsody. Not a perfect film, but still pretty entertaining. The now controversial The Blind Side. Honestly, never been that big of a fan of this one. Got some coming-of-age movies for you here, starting with Tom Hanks is Big. You don't have a coming-of-age collection without The Breakfast Club. Almost Famous. This is a really good movie. Rob Reiner's classic Stand By Me. And then, of course, as a big Star Wars fan and a huge fan of George Lucas, I love American Graffiti. Moving on to my comedy section, and if you know me, I'm not a big comedy person, but I can enjoy a good one. And 21 Jump Street is one of the better modern comedies. Again, you can say my taste might be a little bit too normal, but The Big Lebowski is easily my favorite comedy of all time. A quirky little independent film, Viggo Mortensen's Captain Fantastic. What a lot of people say is the greatest comedy of all time, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Easily my favorite Wes Anderson movie, Grand Budapest Hotel. A steelbook version of Stanley Kubrick's classic Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Just realized this should have been in my Christmas section, Elf, but this is by far my favorite Will Ferrell movie. F. Gary Gray's Friday. Ghostbusters 1 and 2 in a little digibook. I think easily Taika's most underrated movie. Hunt for the Wilder People. This movie's hilarious. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is probably the best Jumanji film. My dad is a big fan of Mel Brooks, so I had to get this back then to watch with him. The Mel Brooks Comedy Collection. Although it's missing a couple of his most prominent films, particularly Young Frankenstein is not in here. The Nice Guys. This movie's awesome. Definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. Super random. I think this was a gift from somebody. I still haven't watched it. This is Night at the Museum 3, Secret of the Tomb. I've seen the first two, though. Also, super random. And if you want to know something, I think this was the first Blu-ray I ever owned. Pink Panther 2. I haven't watched these movies since I was pretty young. I'm sure they haven't aged very well. The Coen classic Raising Arizona. Most people say this is Edgar Wright's best film, Shaun of the Dead. Another pretty funny Will Ferrell movie, Step Brothers. Flea Market Pickup, Ted. I actually still haven't watched this. One of my favorites, This is Spinal Tap. Also, incredibly random. The Three Stooges. It's not very good. It's in my collection. Tropic Thunder, this is the director's cut. Taika's best movie, in my opinion, What We Do in the Shadows. And then the horror comedy, Zombieland. Next, we're going to move into my action section, and we're going to start it off with Edgar Wright's Baby Driver, a box set of the Bourne trilogy, which I think get progressively better. Don't have Bourne Legacy, but I do have Jason Bourne. This was a pretty mediocre movie, but I believe it was a gift. Steve McQueen's classic action film, Bullet. Collateral with Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise gives a really underrated performance here. I've said that word a lot, but I want you guys to watch some of these movies that maybe you haven't heard of. I only own the first Die Hard. I've seen the first 2, never seen 3, 4, or 5. I know they get progressively worse, although a lot of people love 3. Have a love-hate relationship with The Fast and the Furious. I really don't like the first 4 movies at all. But I did enjoy Fast 5. It was alright. I don't think it's as good as people say. Fast 5 is better than 6. 6 is okay. It's better than a lot of the other ones. My favorite's 7, because 7 I think is when it got very self-aware. It got took itself not seriously at all, got really over the top, whether it's The Rock flexing his cast off or Vin Diesel. What's the line he says? It's like, you can't beat the streets or something like that, and he stomps on the ground, filling like the cracks. It got so ridiculous, but it was a nice breath of fresh air, where 5 is still a bit more grounded. This is absolutely absurd, and I enjoyed it before it got too absurd. And then I do also have F8, The Fate of the Furious. One of my favorite movie series of all time, the Indiana Jones. This is the complete adventure with the digibook. I love these movies. I even enjoy Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I liked Dial of Destiny. I want to watch it a second time. I do think it's my least favorite of the 5. The House of Flying Daggers. I still need to watch this, actually. This is one of my grandma's favorite movies, Ice Station Zebra. I do need to complete the John Wick set. I only have the first and the second, but I really enjoy all 4 of them. They're very good movies. I'm a big fan of Lethal Weapon. I haven't seen all 4 of them. They are all in the set, but I love the first one. Mission Impossible. This is the first 4 films. The first one's alright. Second one's pretty bad. The third one is pretty good. Fourth one is great. I really like the fourth one. And then I have Rogue Nation, which is also a great one. Really good here. And the best one by a mile, in my opinion, Mission Impossible Fallout. This is one of the great action movies of the last 10 to 20 years. Doug Liman's fun Mr. and Mrs. Smith movie with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Bong Joon-ho with Snowpiercer. I like this movie. The Matrix is still my favorite Keanu Reeves movie, but Speed this is good stuff. And I quite enjoy Liam Neeson's first Taken movie. Let's move on to Sci-Fi, which, as you probably can guess, is one of my favorite genres ever. We've got 2001: A Space Odyssey, starting it off with arguably the greatest sci-fi movie ever made. The Alien Anthology. This is a box set of all 4 Alien movies. Alien 1 is one of my favorite movies ever. I love it so much. Aliens is also really good. 3 and 4 is terrible. I also have a Prometheus Blu-ray, which I like Prometheus. It's decent. It's better than Alien 3 and 4. Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. And if you're a Blu-ray collector and you didn't own Avatar at some point, do you really have a Blu-ray collection? The Back to the Future trilogy, one of the great trilogies of all time. The first one is a perfect 80s sci-fi movie. This is the 5-disc collector's edition of Blade Runner, which has, I believe, every cut of Blade Runner in it. Theatrical cut, obviously the worst. I love the final cut, I think, is the best one, in my opinion. And then, of course, Denis' perfect Blade Runner sequel, Blade Runner 2049. Children of Men, Alfonso Cuarón, one of his best films. I love this movie. This is great sci-fi. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, A Clockwork Orange. Steven Spielberg's masterpiece, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Took me a while to watch this one. I think I watched it for the first time in college or late high school. Cloverfield's a decent American kaiju movie, even though you don't really see the monsters that much. But 10 Cloverfield Lane is the one we got to talk about. I like this a lot more than Cloverfield. District 9 is a strong sci-fi film, one I want to revisit because I watched this pretty early in my movie watching days. I also have Neil Blomkamp's Elysium, which I picked up at the flea market. I thought this movie was all right. Of course, you have to have Spielberg's E.T. It's one of the great children's family sci-fi movies ever. Alex Garland's Ex Machina is one of the best sci-fi movies of the 2010s. And I love pulpy sci-fi classics. Forbidden Planet is definitely amongst the best of those. Of course, the best picture winning Everything Everywhere All at Once. I did hop on the bandwagon of this. Really enjoyed it. Gravity, which has its haters, but I enjoy how tight of a thriller it is. Independence Day is one of the more fun, cheesy sci-fi movies you can watch. You gotta have Jurassic Park in your collection. I need to add Lost World because that movie's grown on me over the years. I don't really care about Jurassic Park 3. and I really don't care much about the Jurassic World movies. But I do have the first Jurassic World movie in this kind of weird tin case thing. The last bit of my sci-fi collection here begins with the Predator triple feature. It has Predator, Predator 2, and Predators. It doesn't have the new Predator movie. I rate this movie higher than most. I think THX 1138 is a near masterpiece. I love what George did with this. The Terminator is a great little sci-fi thriller, a lot smaller scale than most people think because they think of T2, which is a better movie in every way. Start my Star Trek Blu-rays here. I have the original collection here that has the first 6 movies. I enjoy all of these movies. I've never seen the series, but I've seen every Star Trek film. And although I've seen all the Next Generation movies, I don't have any of them on Blu-ray, but I do have J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. I also have Star Trek Into Darkness, and this one gets a lot of hate. I liked it. I haven't watched it in a long time, though. And we all thought Star Trek Beyond would be awful, and it was actually really fun. Serenity, the perfect follow-up to Firefly. This is a great sci-fi movie. RoboCop deserves all its praise. This is an amazing science fiction film. I love the Planet of the Apes remake, starting with a steelbook version of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Definitely the weakest of the 3. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is my favorite Planet of the Apes film ever. This movie is incredible. I love this film. And then War for the Planet of the Apes is an excellent final film in this trilogy. I have the first Men in Black. Never been a big Men in Black fan. I have the first Matrix. I actually would pick up a collection. I do enjoy the rest of the series. Ridley Scott's The Martian. Probably the best movie he's made in like 20 years. I love Mad Max. I'm a huge fan of the series. Got the box set here that has the original 3, and then it has the 4K copy of Mad Max Fury Road, but I also still have my original Blu-ray copy of Mad Max Fury Road. And then Rian Johnson's Looper, which is probably my favorite Rian Johnson movie. All right, we'll keep it rolling here with kind of a sci-fi action movie vibe, and we'll go with superhero films. I did do MCU earlier, but this is the rest, like DC and then other Marvel and independent comic stuff like Ninja Turtles. First Ninja Turtles movie, still the best Ninja Turtles movie. I really enjoy this movie. Also, Sin City is really good, and I feel a bit underrated. Great comic as well. Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Have to own this. Red it's alright. It's pretty fun. Check it out. I really love the first Kingsman. I think this is great. I wish the others were like this one. Matthew Vaughn's Kick-Ass. I love Kick-Ass. This is a really fun movie. Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy movies are awesome. Another really random one to own. The Green Hornet. I actually liked this movie back in the day. Have not watched it in probably 15 years. Brandon Lee's The Crow. And then amongst my favorite Zack Snyder movies is 300. I think this is probably the film that best exemplifies his style. It works really well in this story. The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened. This is a film, a documentary created by a former YouTuber and filmmaker, John Schnepp, who passed away a while ago. I really enjoyed Collider Video, and before that AMC Videos YouTube channel back in the day, and he was on there talking about comic book films. And he made this about the Tim Burton, Kevin Smith Superman movie with Nicolas Cage and what happened, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Really cool. Next, we've got my Batman movies here, and you have to own Batman the movie. I love this movie. It's so well written. Next is Superman the movie. This is the template that set the stage for all superhero movies. Then we've got Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, which is the vastly superior version of this film. Got a digibook of Tim Burton's Batman. I have a steelbook of Batman Returns. Some of my animated Batman movies. I have Batman Mask of the Phantasm. If you haven't seen this, you're really missing out. This is one of the best Batman movies ever. And then I have Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero. This was the reimagining of Mr. Freeze's origin story for Batman the Animated Series. Superman Returns is a stomachable Superman movie. It's alright. It's alright. So I have this DC triple feature with V for Vendetta, very good movie. Watchmen, which I think Zack Snyder does an admirable job on Watchmen, even if his style interferes with the brilliance of the story. And then John Constantine, or just Constantine with Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is an awful choice to play Constantine, but the movie is actually decent. It's worth watching. First of the DCEU films, Man of Steel. I still think this is underrated. This is a really good movie. Zack Snyder at maybe his most tame. But then we go off the rails with Batman vs. Superman, although this is the Ultimate Edition, which is vastly superior, but it's still not a great movie. I have a steelbook of Wonder Woman. I actually quite like this art style for this movie. A good superhero movie. Only have this because I love the Justice League. I thought this was a cool cover. But I hate this movie. This is the theatrical cut of Justice League. Aquaman is alright. It's a decent superhero movie, but I had a blast with Shazam. I think this is one of the best DCEU movies. Still not top tier superhero filmmaking, but for the DCEU, this is amongst the best. The definition of a COVID purchase. I saw this in theaters before the pandemic. I really wasn't a big fan of it. But family wanted to watch it during the pandemic, so I got it. I have Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie, which can be a bit on the nose. The screenplay is a little off at times, but the acting and the filmmaking behind this are top tier. A bunch of animated DC movies here to discuss. We got Batman: The Dark Knight Returns Deluxe Edition. Out of all DC's animated adaptations of comics, I mean, this is a top tier comic, one of the best comic books ever, but this is a fantastic adaptation. It captures everything, including the art style of the original story. If you have to check out one, I recommend The Dark Knight Returns Deluxe. Batman Gotham Knight, which is like an animated anthology collection. It's got some Japanese filmmakers in here as well. Never been a big fan of Gotham Knight. This was a flea market pickup. I don't know why I bought this. Again, it came out back in the day when I was buying like everything I thought was all right. Saw this in theaters. Hated the first half. But the Killing Joke part, other than the fact that Brian Boland's art style isn't really well translated to the screen, the Killing Joke part's pretty decent. Especially when you have Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, it's worth watching the second half of this. I quite enjoy, as a big fan of Batman the movie, I quite enjoyed these Batman, a classic, I don't know what you want to call them, like Batman 66 revamps. The second one was alright with Two-Face. I don't own that one, but Return of the Caped Crusaders is really fun. If you like Batman the movie, check this out. Adam West, Burt Ward, they both return here. Batman Under the Red Hood is one that a lot of fans, myself included, think is as good, if not better, than the original comic book. Changes quite a bit, but the story here is captured so well. Let's move over to Marvel, and we have the first Blade, and then I'd put Blade 2 with it as well, even though comes out later in the timeline from stuff you'll see, but I like this movie more than the first one. The first X-Men movie from 2000. This is alright, but it's fun and nostalgic for me. But X2 X-Men United is better in every single way. This is a great superhero movie, definitely amongst the top tier. X-Men First Class is one of the best reboots, I guess you could say, we have in the superhero genre. I also quite enjoyed The Wolverine. This movie has problems. Third act is a bit messy, but for a Wolverine movie at the time, especially coming after X-Men Origins, this was a major step up. Easily my favorite X-Men movie of all time is X-Men Days of Future Past. We got a glare there, but that's alright. This is a great movie. Marries both timelines. It's so good. A solid adaptation of the original story, but it's a great movie. And I do like the Sentinel design. X-Men Apocalypse. This one's alright. I don't think it deserves the hate it gets, but it's not very good. But Logan is excellent. This is a top-tier superhero movie. Then we also have Deadpool, a huge surprise, something that I was so glad finally got made, and it was absolutely worth it. Can't wait for Deadpool 3. Deadpool 2 is also pretty good. I like what they did here, especially with Josh Brolin's Cable is actually really solid. I have to own the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. I own Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 on Blu-ray. Never invested in the third one, although I want it because I do have a little of a soft spot for that. I watched it when I was younger. And the dancing is awesome. The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. It's an alright movie. And then I need to pick up Across the Spider-Verse because I like that one more, but Into the Spider-Verse is also an excellent animated film. Next up is horror. I have a pretty decent sized horror collection. We'll start out here with The Gremlins, a very fun movie. David Cronenberg's The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, a great body horror film. The Exorcist, one of the great horror movies of all time. This movie is still chilling. I have the Evil Dead trilogy, starting with the first one in Steelbook. Then you have the second one, which is my favorite. And then Army of Darkness. Still haven't opened this, but I've seen it. Underrated little Sam Raimi horror movie, Drag Me to Hell. Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. This isn't really a horror movie. I probably would have put it in thriller. I guess there are some thrillers that creeped in over here, but Donnie Darko, I really think this is a great movie as well. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This is my favorite Hitchcock. I think we are getting a bit into the thriller part of here that I didn't add to my kind of crime thriller section earlier. Shutter Island, underrated Scorsese film. I feel like this one's found its following, though, over the years. The Silence of the Lambs is a masterpiece, one of my favorite movies ever. One of the best thrillers ever. 7. And then The Usual Suspects, incredible performances, a great story, and an amazing twist. Definitely check it out. Okay, back to horror. I have Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. It's so hard to get the original Dawn of the Dead on Blu-ray. I think there's something with the copyright. Got George Romero's Creep Show, which is a fun anthology horror film. Some modern horror classics, or at least the first one, The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2. I know these are like sometimes in horror communities like too popular to love, but I think they're both pretty good movies. Stephen King's Christine by John Carpenter. The very fun Cabin in the Woods. This should be more in my thriller section as well, but Black Swan is incredible. Tim Burton's Beetlejuice is one of the best horror comedies. Amityville Horror, haven't watched this one yet, but I've heard all right things. Christian Bale's American Psycho. This is a fun kind of disturbing horror movie. And then I have 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. Next we have the original TV version of It, as well as the newer version of It. This is Chapter 1. Chapter 2, I wasn't a big fan of. Jaws, one of the best horror thrillers ever. The First Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the classics. I love this film. I've been waiting to talk about this one. The Lighthouse. Oh, man, I love this movie. This is one of my favorite movies ever. For my Halloween marathon this year, I finally watched every Friday the 13th movie. This just has the first 8. I'd like to get, there's that like Scream Factory, is it Shat Factory, Scream Factory, a box set that's really cool. I don't want to pay that much for Friday the 13th, because I'm not a huge fan of this series, although number 6, I love number 6. I was kind of unsure where to put The Northman. I think it's fantasy I would probably put it in now, but The Northman is amazing. I love this movie. I'm a huge fan of Robert Eggers, so The Northman hit all of those notes for me. I have Insidious Chapter 2. I have Chapter 1 in a collection here that I will show in a couple seconds. It's called The Haunted Anthology. I bought this a long time ago. You know, for shelf purposes, I probably wish I would have bought just the regular Insidious Chapter 1, but this has some good movies in it. I've seen all but, what was The Last Exorcism? I haven't watched that yet, but 1408 is pretty good. The Others is great. You gotta watch The Others. Insidious 1, pretty solid. And then The Blair Witch Project, I think, really holds up well. Halloween's an absolute classic, one of my favorite horror movies ever. And I also liked Halloween 2018 for what it was. The greatest horror movie of all time, M. Night Shyamalan and Mark Wahlberg's The Happening. Oh my god. This movie. Have any of you seen this movie? In So Bad It's Good movie circles, which you can tell I'm a fan of, why does nobody talk about this? Like, The Happening is one of my favorite So Bad It's Good movies. This movie is hilarious. Like, hilarious. Check this out. Like, if you haven't watched The Happening, you like bad movies. Oh, Mark Wahlberg is peak in this. Like, he is so good. It's so funny. He has some great lines. I'll throw one in here so you can see it.
I hear you whispering. Planning on stealing something?
No, ma'am, we're not.
Plan on murdering me in my sleep?
What? No. I was in a pharmacy a while ago. There was a really good-looking pharmacist behind the counter. Really good-looking. I went up and I asked her where the cough syrup was. I didn't even have a cough. And I almost bought it. And I'm talking about a completely superfluous bottle of cough syrup. That's like $6.
Are you joking?
But seriously though, Hereditary, oh my god, this movie's disturbing. I don't know if I'll ever watch this again, but I had to have it in the collection because this is one of the great horror movies ever. One I still haven't gotten to is Oculus, but I've always heard pretty good things about this. A lot of people say it's underrated. The Omen, this is a classic. I think it holds up extremely well. Paranormal Activity 1, this is alright. Pet Sematary would be better if the acting was better. The Phantasm Remastered, this is the first Phantasm movie. I know this has a huge cult following. I don't love The Phantasm. Maybe it needs a rewatch from me, but that's alright. Poltergeist is a fun, kind of 80s horror movie produced by Steven Spielberg. I love The Quiet Place. It's more of a thriller than a horror, but this is good stuff. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. The American version of The Ring. This is a solid movie. It's a solid adaptation. The TV version of Salem's Lot from Stephen King. Still haven't watched this. The Saw 7 film collection. I'll be honest, not a huge fan of what Saw became, but I really love the first one. I think it's a good, underrated thriller. If you're not interested in body gore, which frankly I'm not a big fan of, but you do love horror thriller, the first one is definitely worth checking out. Scream is one of my favorites of all time. I love this movie, watch it every year, and I'm a big fan of Scream 2. I think it's a great sequel. Again, normal taste, but The Shining is the best horror movie of all time. I love The Sixth Sense. This is M. Night Shyamalan's best movie. Suspiria is a classic. It's one of the best Italian horror films. And I think amongst early slashers, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is really second only to Halloween. This is an excellent movie. I still haven't watched Tremors, but I've heard fun things about this movie. Big fan of Trick or Treat. This is a really entertaining anthology movie. I love classic horror, and this is an awesome box set of the Universal Monsters collection. The Wicker Man is a horror classic. This is the original one with Christopher Lee. Amazing movie. Chilling, and one that sticks with you after it's over. Adam Wingard's You're Next is cheesy. It's over the top, but it's a great homage to old slashers. Ones that I forgot earlier because they're displayed in a different area than the rest of my Blu-rays. But I have the Lord of the Rings series, starting with the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings. I'll be honest, I don't love this movie. Very interesting to watch, though. Very interesting to watch, but not great. I have a theatrical copy of Return of the King. Then I have, of course, this box set. Everybody has this, but it's beautiful and I love it. The Lord of the Rings extended editions with all of that extra bonus content as well as the behind the scenes stuff. This is an essential own. And I have the whole Hobbit trilogy on extended edition as well. If you've seen my Lord of the Rings tier list, I'm a big fan of The Unexpected Journey. I don't think the extended edition adds much to it, but I really like An Unexpected Journey. Desolation of Smog is where it starts to go downhill. They change a lot of stuff, add a bunch of unnecessary stuff, but this is still a pretty good movie. And then Battle of the Five Armies, especially the extended version, is almost unbearable. It's so long. I do appreciate being in Middle-earth. I love the battle sequences when they're done well, but there's some cheesy stuff, there's some pointless stuff. It's an unnecessary film, but it's still Middle-earth. Of course, the ones you might know I was going to have eventually, my Star Wars collections. This is the original 2011 Blu-ray set for Star Wars. This is still my favorite Star Wars set. I love this. It's beautiful. I love the art in here. Incredible stuff. I have a Blu-ray set. I have the DVD set. I have the VHS set, but this is my favorite one. This was my copy of The Force Awakens originally. It does fold out and have a bunch of extra art. Being obsessed with The Force Awakens when it came out in 2015, I do have a couple copies of this because they added behind the scenes stuff, which was missing from the original Blu-ray. I don't know why they did that. It was dumb, but they probably just come out with this collector's edition in 3D. Very cool set. But yeah, this is all stuff that should have been in the original version. And then I have a steelbook for The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. You can check out my Star Wars rankings video for my thoughts on both of these films. I also have this Target version of Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. It comes in a big box with a lot of different inserts you can put in, some cool behind the scenes features. It also has the 3D Blu-ray. And then last but not least, I have the steelbook version of Solo, A Star Wars Story. So here's a bunch of recent pickups you can see in this video. These are all ones I haven't watched, and I'm looking forward to watching them, but I haven't put them in the collection yet. A Mothra, which I did the whole Godzilla marathon over the past year. Fell in love with kaiju movies in that series, and I can't wait to watch Mothra. Big fan of the original Frankensteins, and this has the rest of the series that's not in my Universal Classic Monsters collection. That only has Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. This has everything from Son of Frankenstein all the way to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. The Chucky 7 movie collection, I've only watched the first 2 in this, so I'm working my way through this series. Might save it for next Halloween. The Grapes of Wrath, a classic that I'm going to have to find the time to watch. As well as the original All Quiet on the Western Front. Best Picture winner. I usually watch Best Picture winners as we lead up to the Oscar, so maybe I'll watch this one this year. I definitely want to check this out soon because of Dune Part 2, but Denis Villeneuve's Incendie, I believe you say. I've heard amazing things about this film. And then as a big Beatles fan, I haven't seen the Magical Mystery Tour all the way through, so I have this Blu-ray. Alright, so my last little section here before I get into Criterion and Collector's Edition Blu-ray stuff that I have is going to be anime and Japanese film. So we're going to start here with a fan-made version of Angel's Egg that I did buy off of eBay. It's cool to own a Blu-ray of this. This is an awesome movie. You definitely gotta watch it. Favorite anime of all time, Cowboy Bebop. I absolutely love this series, and I love the film as well. I've been slowly making my way through Demon Slayer, but I've watched season 1, and of course I've watched the Mugen Train film. I also picked up The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, the movie. From what I hear, this is a follow-up to another series, so I gotta watch that series before I watch this film. This film is incredibly highly rated on Letterboxd, which I use a lot, so I picked it up when there was a sale, but I'm looking forward to watching the series as well as watching this. I have the first Ghost in the Shell movie, which is maybe my favorite anime movie ever, and as well as Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, which is also a very good film. I just picked this up like 2 days ago off of Amazon. There was a sale on Perfect Blue. This is the Steelbook version. This is an amazing film. Definitely check this out if you haven't seen it. On to my Ghibli section, and although Future Boy Conan isn't technically Ghibli, this was the first thing Hayao Miyazaki did. I also have Grave of the Fireflies, which is a devastating movie. Howl's Moving Castle, another incredible film from Ghibli. Princess Mononoke, it's either my favorite or second favorite Ghibli movie. I love this film. A flea market pickup, and honestly one that's not one of their best, but still pretty good movie, Secret World of Arrietty. And now we move into my other Japanese film. Most of the Kurosawa films I have are in Criterion, so you'll see those later. But Ron, I have on a regular Blu-ray. And then I got super into Godzilla this past year, just in time for Godzilla -1 after my trip to Japan. But I have the Godzilla Criterion Collection, you'll see later, but the rest of these I picked up to watch from the Toho Godzilla collections. This is Godzilla vs. Destoria and Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. Also have Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, one of the best titles in movie history. And then Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, not as good as Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 in my opinion. Then we also have Godzilla Tokyo SOS. That one's alright. And Godzilla Final Wars is absolutely insane. It's almost impossible to rate that movie. It's out there. You've got to check it out if you're interested in Godzilla. But only watch it if you've seen the rest of them. And then even though this is an American movie, I threw in the 2014 Godzilla movie in there. It's my favorite of the Universal Monster verse. I want to rewatch Godzilla King of the Monsters after having binged the rest of the series. I think I would enjoy that one a lot more. So the last couple parts here will be special edition collections, TV, and Criterion. I'm a huge fan of Criterion. All the features they offer, the packaging, the restorations, all of it is phenomenal, and I really enjoy collecting for Criterion Collection. I'm going to start off, I have them in number order, 7 Samurai, Akira Kurosawa. And most of these Criterion movies are excellent. This is a masterpiece. Kurosawa's crime noir masterpiece, High and Low. Another Kurosawa with Yojimbo. Spike Lee's masterpiece, Do the Right Thing. Hitchcock's Best Picture winning Rebecca. Another Hitchcock film with Notorious. Federico Fellini's homage to filmmaking, 8.5. I love this film. I'm hit and miss on Andrei Tarkovsky. I think Solaris is a bit overrated, but still a really solid movie. One of my favorite Kurosawa movies ever, Ikiru. David Cronenberg's weird sci-fi horror Videodrome. I'm a pretty big fan of Ingmar Bergman. However, Fanny and Alexander's not my favorite. Masaki Kobayashi's masterpiece, Harakiri. This movie is incredible. Richard Linklater's staple of the coming-of-age genre, Dazed and Confused. I only have a couple of Criterion DVDs, but I have some for ones you can't get on Blu-ray anymore or never came out on Blu-ray. This is Spirit of the Beehive. Paul Schrader's Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, an excellent film. The 1930s surrealist horror classic, Vampire. Kind of a weird one. I found this originally in a Blockbuster rental copy that I bought at the flea market. I put it in this Blu-ray case, but it is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Roman Polanski's Repulsion. Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas. John Wayne's first starring role in John Ford's Stagecoach. Terrence Malick's surreal war film, The Thin Red Line. One of Kubrick's masterpieces, Paths of Glory. Charles Laughton's masterpiece, The Night of the Hunter. My favorite Charlie Chaplin film of all time, Modern Times. A DVD version of Brian De Palma's Blowout. I have a few of Chaplin's other great films. The Great Dictator is an amazing movie. Another one of the films that made me fall in love with cinema. This is 12 Angry Men. One of Charlie Chaplin's earliest films, The Gold Rush. Elia Kazan's On the Waterfront, starring Marlon Brando in one of his best performances. I'm also a huge fan of this Charlie Chaplin film, City Lights. The Beatles: A Hard Day's Night is a super fun Beatles movie, maybe the most entertaining of the Beatles movies. All That Jazz is another incredible film. My favorite David Lynch movie, Eraserhead. One of my favorite movies of all time, La Dolce Vita. One of the Coen brothers' more subtle and understated films. This is Inside Llewyn Davis. Charlie Chaplin's The Kid is an excellent movie as well. Not much needs to be said about The Graduate. It's an incredible movie. A super underrated comedy that I'm glad got a Criterion release. This is The In-Laws, starring Alan Arkin. The Coens' first movie, Blood Simple. The best romance trilogy of all time, and my favorite romance movie of all time is Before Sunrise. This has Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight. Probably my favorite Tarkovsky film, Stalker. Another excellent Kubrick film, Barry Lyndon. Incredibly horrific film, The Cremator. This movie disturbed me. It's a lot of real-life implications. It's a movie I feel like not a lot of people know about. If you leave the Criterion section of this video and you're like, I haven't heard of a couple of these movies, The Cremator is so good. I think this is a masterpiece. Come and See is such a visceral war movie. It's one of the top-rated films on Letterboxd for a reason. Absolutely excellent. The Ascent is a tragic and harrowing war film. Probably my second favorite Tarkovsky. This is Mirror. And here it is, the Godzilla collection from the Showa era. This has every movie from 1954 to 1975. I love this. I loved watching these movies. I love this series. The original Godzilla is a masterpiece, in my opinion. It is so good. You have to watch that original film. Even if you liked -1, which I loved, it's probably my second favorite Godzilla, bordering on my favorite. If you haven't seen the original, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's that good. I also have the Essential Fellini collection from Criterion. This collects all his best work, including La Dolce Vita and 8.5, which I already had. But I picked this up kind of for one reason, and one reason only, and that's to watch Nights of Cabiria, which is one of his most famous films that I hadn't seen. It was out of print on Criterion, and they don't make it in any other way on Blu-ray. Sometimes it's on streaming, but I wanted to own it. Fellini is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. I love his work, and I can't wait to finish all of it by watching this whole set. So a lot of these I needed to organize into my Criterion set, and a lot of these were actually gifts or recent pickups that I haven't yet watched. And so I left them out, but for Christmas I did get The Red Shoes. I'm looking forward to watching that, as well as Cure, which I've heard incredible things about. The Apu trilogy I actually have watched, just not put in the set yet, but this is a great series. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I've heard amazing things, just have yet to watch it. Sancho the Bailiff, I want this to be one of my next watches. I've heard amazing things about this as well. Going back and trying to finish up the Bong Joon-ho I haven't watched, Memories of Murder is the one I consistently hear is amongst his best. I've been putting off watching this for a long time because of how long they are, even though I've heard they're incredible movies. The Human Condition trilogy. One day, soon, hopefully, one day I will do a watch of this one weekend, maybe one each day. A Brighter Summer Day, also heard amazing things about this movie, but it's very long. The other Edward Yang masterpiece I have yet to watch as well, Yi Yi. And then two classic Japanese films, Tokyo Story and A Woman in the Dunes. Need to watch these as well. Got some TV here to show off. I have Band of Brothers, Game of Thrones Season 1, Preacher, which I bought because I thought I would watch this, never have. I had fallen in love with The Walking Dead at one point for the first 3.5 seasons, and I don't buy much TV, but I bought these because I loved the show so much back then. I haven't watched them, though, since Season 1, Season 2, and then I made my own little case for this steelbook of Season 3. A little bit of Star Wars TV to show off here. I do have my old DVDs of Star Wars Clone Wars, the Genndy Tartakovsky series. I almost wanted to say Andrei Tartakovsky. That would have been a really different series. Here is also where I keep my DVD of Star Wars The Clone Wars. This is the film. And then I have the first 4 seasons of Star Wars The Clone Wars. I always wanted to get that box set that had the first 5 in it. Here's Season 1. This is a digibook. Also a digibook of Season 2. Standard Blu-ray of Season 3. Then I had a standard DVD of Season 4. I also only own the first 2 seasons of Star Wars Rebels. Here's a TV show. I guess sports is a TV show, right? If you've seen my old backgrounds, and you see what I wear a lot on the channel in Big Bay Area, sports fan, and the Giants have been my team forever. It's my favorite. They were my favorite team growing up, and when they won the World Series, it was a magical moment. I had to get the Blu-ray. I also have the 2012 World Series Champions Blu-ray, as well as the behind-the-scenes footage from the franchise series. Some more behind-the-scenes stuff from the 2010 World Series. This DVD I bought back in the day, a conversation with Barry Bonds when he was on his road to hitting 756 home runs. Still the greatest baseball player of all time. Come at me. And then the complete run of the 2010 World Series. I've got some superhero TV for you, starting with my favorite superhero show of all time, Batman the Animated Series. This is the collector's edition or deluxe edition. And also maybe my second favorite superhero show ever, Batman Beyond. Absolutely love this series. Some odds and ends for you, including the 67 Spider-Man show, as well as a DVD of the Batman Superman movie. This is great stuff. Some Hanna-Barbera superhero DVDs with Super Friends United They Stand and Super Friends Attack of the Legion of Doom. I also have my DVD of Scooby-Doo Meets Batman. I also have some of the classic Fleischer Brothers Superman cartoon DVDs with Superman vs. Nature and War and Superman vs. Monsters and Villains. And the last TV-related thing I have is this Breaking Bad set, which I've always loved. It is super cool. You open it up, it's got all of the seasons of the show as well as some behind-the-scenes stuff. Probably my favorite TV show of all time. So I had to get this. Couple more box sets for you, then we'll be on our way. I have the DC 10th Anniversary Collection, which collected every single animated adaptation that DC had produced over the course of that 10 years. It does include some I already had on Blu-ray, but this is an awesome set. It does come in this book, which is really cool, with some amazing artwork. I really enjoyed having this collection. Oh, hi, Blu-ray. I have The Room, signed by Tommy Wiseau, which he wrote, To Liam, Love, Tommy, which is one of my prized possessions there. This was actually recently I got this, and the shirt. If you live in a relatively major city, which I live near Los Angeles, you can go see Tommy debut his new film, Big Shark. I guess this is a promo for Tommy Wiseau, but I'm happy to do it because the event was so fun. You can go watch Big Shark, which is insane. It's a rough cut, so you get to even see a lot of variations of this movie. And you can go watch The Room with spoons and everything, get the whole experience. And he will sign something for you if you buy something. So I bought the Blu-ray, and he signed it for me and told me he loves me. So there we go. I also have the Tartan Asian Extreme DVD version of Old Boy. This is an amazing film. I have this bust, I guess you could call it, of Caesar from the Planet of the Apes movies. This came out with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I'm a huge fan of that movie, so it's kind of obsessed with it. This was a gift, and it does have the first two in there as well as some extra bonus stuff. Okay, last but not least, I didn't really do any VHS stuff, although I do have a modest VHS collection, and I'm working on trying to build it out a bit more because I do enjoy collecting VHS. But here is the Star Wars Collectors, what is it officially called? Special Letterbox Collector's Edition. I found this at the flea market 10 years ago, and I bought it because, of course, you got to have Star Wars on VHS. This is a really awesome collection, and it was brand new. It wasn't, the box still wasn't sealed, but all this other stuff is sealed, and it's got this book here. It's got the inserts still, and it's still got all three films, as well as the making of it, which is still sealed. And you got Return of the Jedi, and let me pull out. Oh, they're slipping out there. Of course, A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. So, if you want to see more VHS stuff, let me know. I could do a VHS video in the future. And that is it. So thanks for watching this long video. I hope you enjoyed it. 1,000 subscribers special. Thank you so much again for subscribing, supporting this channel. I can't wait to make more videos for this channel. I know 1,000 subscribers definitely a more motivating number, but let me know what you want to see next. I have so many collection videos I'd like to do, so if you want to see one in particular, let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know what some of your favorite stuff you have in your collection is, maybe some of your favorite things that I had in my collection. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.